All right. Happy Valentine's Day and welcome to the DATAcated Show. My name is Kate Strachny and I am your host of the DATAcated Show and founder of DATAcated. Today we have a Valentine's Day special event where we're actually going to give away two prizes. You're going to get two of these bears, but wait, this bear is a little not ready for the show right now. We actually got matching t-shirts. Hold on, let me show you side by side. It says I heart data. And you actually, if you look close enough, you'll see DATAcated in the T because I can't miss a branding opportunity. So if you want to win a teddy bear, we're giving away two of these. All you have to do is type in hashtag data into either LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter. And even though it's Valentine's Day, we are talking about data, believe it or not. We're going to talk about machine learning. We're going to talk about how do we accurately and effectively present machine learning model results to key stakeholders. And in order to help me do that, we're going to put the bear aside for a little bit because the bear, believe it or not, does not know much about machine learning. It's just a stuffed animal. We're going to bring in a real expert. Her name is Kristen Kehrer, and she is the chief evangelist and founder of Data Moves Me. And I believe data moves us all. So before I bring her on, quick reminder, hashtag data to win the raffle. We're going to have one giveaway about halfway through the show. So about 15 minutes in and another one towards the end. So make sure you stick around. And this is a live show. So ask your questions, leave your comments, and we'll try to engage with as many of you as possible. Here's the hashtag quickly just to show you in case you can't spell data. Now let's go ahead and bring Kristen on the show.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Welcome to the DATAcated Show once again, Kristen. I know we've done this a bunch of times, but we've never done it with a teddy bear. So we have not named him yet. So if you guys got names, leave it in the comments as well. Kristen, for those 5 people who might not know you yet, let's do a quick intro. Tell us who you are and what you do and what your typical day in the life looks like these days.
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I'm Kristen Kehrer. I'm the founder of Data Moves Me. I've been a data scientist since 2010. So, my background was bachelor's degree in math, master's degree in statistics. Then I worked in the utilities, healthcare, e-commerce, and then eventually went out on my own. So today, what that looks like, I have an NDA, so I can't share a lot, but I'm building out a couple of generative AI use cases for a company, and I just built out the first use case demo, and now I'm working on getting that into a production environment. I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn. So my favorite is to create demos for people's products, and then I get to learn and share awesome products with others. And I'm currently working on a book. I have a wonderful co-author, Caleb Kaiser, but we're publishing this with Wiley, and it is Machine Learning Upgrade, a data scientist's guide to ML ops, LLMs, and ML infrastructure.
Very nice. And I love the title because my book is a dated storyteller's guide. So we're using the guide together. I love it. You're doing a lot. So you must be pretty busy. So again, appreciate you taking the time to chat with us here today. The topic that we're going to talk about is how to actually present ML model results to stakeholders. And before we get through all that, first, let's address some of our audience. We've got data coming through. I love data. Hey, Monica's here. Data. Great to see you all here. Now, before we get into the actual meat of it, let's first define what is machine learning for those who are not familiar with that.
Yeah, so the non-technical definition is basically you're taking data, and data is any type of information, right? We often think of tabular data, but it could also be image, audio, text data, and you're giving that to an algorithm and you're getting output. And so it could be that you're doing a supervised use case, which is what we most often think about, where you have a target variable and you're looking to predict something, or you can do unsupervised, where you use something like the statistical topic modeling, or k-means for cluster analysis, and you don't have a target variable, but you're able to use the algorithm to break your data up into groups and then do analysis post that.
Well, thanks for
That was
that.
off
Speaking of unsupervised, there's someone in the chat who shall not be unsupervised at any time. Susan,
we'll watch
for
on that woman. Love you, Susan.
Yes. Okay, and then let's take a step further. What would you define as a machine learning model?
So the model itself is typically math. There's a lot of linear algebra involved. So if I'm doing regression analysis, I'm just looking to minimize the errors and find an estimate. So it's a lot of just mathematical calculations that help you to fit a math model.
And I'm assuming that's not the easiest thing for everyone to understand.
Yeah, well, it's funny because as time goes on, there's like even more of an abstraction, right? Because 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the majority of the time when we were fitting a model, it would have coefficients that we could then interpret and say, okay, for, 1 year increase in age, it has this effect. And now, with like XGBoost coming out in 2013, and then only more so, a lot of these models function more as what people call black boxes, and they're not interpretable. And there's even more calculations happening behind the scenes, and it's sort of more difficult to talk about. However, there's also been huge advancements in explainable AI, and we have libraries available like Lime and Shep to help us to be able to talk about the output of these models and sort of give a little bit of a glimpse into how they're coming up with these estimates and predictions.
Yeah, you brought me back. You said 2013, totally took me off track. I'm like, how long ago was that? And then it made me feel old. And I'm like, oh yeah, lots have changed since 2013. Lots have changed since 2022, right? With the whole AI ChatGPT stuff coming out, and nothing's been the same ever since. Now, not to take us off track here. So in your experience, so you've worked with ML models, you've built them, you've played around with different tools to create them, to explore, and you've had to present them at the end, right? So that's sort of the last step of your process. What have you learned over the course of your career, and what can you share with our audience here today that can make their presenting of ML results simpler, easier, more effective than it is today?
Right. And so I've learned a lot over the course of my career, and I'm hoping that current data science students have it a whole lot easier, because when you're getting a master's degree in statistics, you learn that presenting model results, because we'd build logistic regression models, nothing fancy, but in the end, it was very much, hey, when you present results, you should be talking about the data, the results themselves, you create a summary, you talk about the methodology. And that was sort of it. And it was very scientific. And then I got to industry and I realized that it doesn't fly in business at all. And you need to think a little bit more strategically about how you set up these decks. And a lot of times you're not even talking about the methodology in a technical sense. You're making these things friendly. You might not talk about, all the data. The results, you're certainly not posting them the way that you would in a technical presentation. Like if you put coefficients and p-values on a slide, you can completely derail a meeting with p-values and never get that meeting back. And like the p-values weren't actually, relevant to the meeting at all. It didn't necessarily make a difference. If the model's doing what it's supposed to be doing, like they don't need to know that the p-value was, 0.02. Another thing that I did, way back in the beginning of my career was I was building neural net models to forecast hourly electric load. And I put up
Sounds simple, Kristen. Sounds very
yeah.
simple.
But I put up the architecture of a neural net on one of the presentation slides, and I actually had like the function as well. And I was presenting to the supply chain organization. And so this was probably my biggest faux pas. But yeah, I mean, nobody knew what I was talking about. And like, did I even really know what I was talking about? Like, who knows, right? But so I've learned a lot of stuff along the way. And then now, I'm really big on making sure that I highlight individuals who were, what did the model say about them? What if I have a model for somebody for getting approved for a loan, like what does their credit look like? What is their, different variables that were inputs into the model, and what was the final result? So you could start to piece together and say, okay, when the model sees this information, it's likely to say this for another person, and sort of building out that story and bringing it to life. I even like to use people's names too, actually. Like, oh, this was Jim, and he had a seasonal usage behavior, and here was his business. You can like get that this might be a seasonal business. But, it's on a very different side than what you're doing when you're getting a master's degree in statistics.
I love that you use names in your examples. I think it makes it a lot more personable and makes the person help understand, go on that journey, hear a story and relate to it more. Now, I wanted to ask, do you think that sometimes data scientists or ML experts, they tend to include the technical aspect because they are so proud of what they've accomplished, right? It's not an easy task. And they're like, look what I did. And in the process, they may lose people. But I had, I forget who exactly it was, because now I've done so many of these shows, but someone on the show, if you remember who you are, tell me, recently said that the data teams don't really get as much appreciation for what they do because now they've started making it more user friendly. And it's like, oh, well, that looks so simple, right? What do you do all day? So now they're encouraging them to bring it back just a little bit, to not go through all the p-values and every step and every system you use, but sort of make it clear that it wasn't like a clear process. And I wanted to get your thoughts on, do you think we still need to add a bit of the complexity, or do you think we just speak the business language and make it as straightforward as possible?
I don't know. I actually think of, dance not being in the Olympics, right? And it's
Okay.
a very difficult sport, but you practice until it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
And so people don't really appreciate how difficult it is sometimes because it looks so good. And I don't, as somebody who has sat through meetings that have gotten completely derailed, like I've already been on that side of this isn't effective.
Yep.
And my experience has also been too that, often like people will think that you're a wizard. Like I don't know that I've had the experience of somebody thinking that an analysis was too simple. Because if I'm explaining to you when we're doing a behavioral customer segmentation about how the algorithm that we're using for cluster analysis is going to find groups of people who are very similar, and it's going to put it from, it's like, I'm explaining it to you so you can understand it, but you also know that there is math going on behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
And that like you probably couldn't write the Python code to do it yourself. Like I just don't see, I mean, and maybe I'm going all out here, but
no, I think that makes perfect sense. That's
in the beginning part of your question, like in the beginning of my career, I absolutely did add things to my presentation to hope that I felt smart. And it blew up in my face, right? So like I learned, and maybe we all need to go through that experience. I don't know. But I also too, I once made a really nice visualization that was three-dimensional, on like a 2D piece of paper or whatever, but it was like a 3D graph.
okay.
And it got axed before I presented it to stakeholders because she was like, not everyone knows how to read a 3D graph.
Yeah.
But also, like, did it add a lot to the presentation. What were my real takeaways there? Like, I could make a 3D graph, and I actually did like the fit, that stock photograph that's like the fish jumping out of the fish bowl into a bigger bowl.
Yeah.
I had like the 3D graph as like the bowl itself, and the
I got to see this
fish
thing.
was jumping out of the cube, right? It got X.
Wow.
I don't know. I've tried a lot of things over time, and not all of them worked. And that's
Well, you got to keep trying, right?
I also don't think we're going back to more difficult either, or I don't think that would be a good move.
I agree with you. There was a question here from George. He's asking, what tools do you work with most?
I mean, when it comes to presentations, honestly, and this isn't necessarily what you're looking for, but make sure you have the brand palette of the company. I see a lot of people running off and just creating things in like unfavorable colors, and like that's not going to help. And then really, like, I'm in PowerPoint, and Canva is amazing. Like, even if you are somebody who is, you're working for a company, I think we see Canva's, I don't know, everyone that I know that's using Canva is like their own little small business. But being able to create graphics in there that look great, I think is awesome.
I use it all the time. I mean, 100%. I actually used Canva to put together the heart video that comes down when we're talking. So
love Canva. Oh, and that color cop, which I guess like they have a color picker in Canva too. But being able to get colors from, it's like this whole other side of data science where you're like figuring out how to also market.
I know a thing or two about colors. Yes.
Yeah, you do.
It's that last inch of data analytics. We got to get it there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're about to do our first giveaway of Mr. Teddy Bear. I don't know. We still don't have a name. No one's helped me come up with a name. Jim. Jim. Todd? You really like the name Jim. This is the second Jim of the show. So
is
Jim.
It?
Yeah,
oh, well,
you said you were gonna name someone Jim in your example. So all right. Whoever wants Jimmy, #data. I know Susan wants, because I've seen like 20 #datas come out of just Susan. Oh, there she goes. Look.
Don't threaten her with a good time.
I love that. So before we do our first giveaway, let's take one more question from Dan. So Dan says, machine learning has exploded over the past few years. With LLMs and GPTs coming into the mainstream, they're amazing tools, but also dangerous. What keeps you up at night about their adoption? We're listening.
I don't think I feel like that's like a loaded question, right? But for my own use cases, I just worry about there being enough testing that once we go to production, that I'm not going to get a response that's going to make my stakeholders not like me. But that's the honest one. I mean, I don't have, I liked listening to Jan LeCun in one of his talks he gave at the AI summit this year. And he was just talking about how it's very important that we keep these models, or that we have access to these models as open source. And he just really believes that there's way more good guys, and if we have enough good guys working on it, that's going to outweigh the bad guys. But I haven't been giving a ton of thought to the outside of building and utilizing them myself, right? Like what's going on in the rest of the world.
It's interesting. That's one of the quotes I also remember from him, is like the fact that there are more good people than bad people in the world. Therefore, the use of AI in general would tend to be good because of the number of people who want to do good. I'm optimistic, so let's see if that's
Yeah,
gonna
no, that's the
happen.
thing is I like to just stay optimistic about it.
Yeah, let's be optimistic. All right. Hashtag data. If Susan doesn't win like this first round, I'm gonna be upset for her because she needs this teddy bear. So I'm gonna go ahead and draw our first raffle winner. By the way, if I win, because I was testing it earlier, I'll make sure not to count that. Let's see. Ooh, Intisar, congratulations. Just writing your name down. Please send me a note on LinkedIn and I will make sure to send you Jim. Jim the teddy. Oh man, Susan just she's spamming all of it.
Getting ready for the next one. Gotta load up.
So what's your favorite part about presenting ML models? Like, I'm assuming you like it since that's what, first of all, you chose to talk about this. And second, like you said that part of your favorite thing to do is explore these tools and projects and showcase them and test things out. Like, why do you like this stuff so much?
I think I like it because I feel like I've learned a lot over the years, and it feels really good to be able to go in there and tell them what this would be able to do for the business, show them how the model is working, how they would expect, and start to build that trust. Being able to explain, using something like SHAP, or if you're using an interpretable model, and being able to interpret those results for them and get those insights about what is actually driving retention, what is driving this other thing that we're supposed to go, right? Because a lot of times in industry, people come to these meetings where you're scoping things and they already have their previously held beliefs, right? And they're almost looking to see that. And when you find something new and you're able to, share that with them and change people's ideas and come up with something new that you could later, of course, when you get ML model results, that is correlation, not causation. If you find something interesting, you're going to want to run a hypothesis test to understand if there's actually a causal relationship there. But to share these initial insights and learn something new, and that gets people excited. It builds trust. And not only that, I enjoy going on tour. Sometimes if you're trying to get buy-in on a model, you might go sit with operations, then you go sit with marketing, then you're sitting with some product group. And that's all fun when those presentations get across well, and you've gotten across that you've really done your due diligence and that you're able to add value and find new interesting opportunities to go pursue in addition to having a model. That's awesome.
Yeah. So you mentioned lots of different types of stakeholders. Do you have a favorite type of stakeholder to present to? Is it the one that actually gets you, or is it the one that maybe doesn't really understand what you're talking about and you like explaining it to them in a way that makes sense?
I don't know. I think I've always thought of it in terms of who's the most important to get buy-in so that I can actually keep going with this.
Okay.
But then in general, it's going to be the people that I am closest to, or if we looked at it by level, I absolutely prefer speaking to people who are, either peers or, just a level or two above, where I can go in with a deck that's maybe 15 pages long and actually go through the stuff. Because if you're sitting down with a VP, you might only go in with 1 page or 3 pages. And then it becomes this exercise of really trying to figure out how to frame that, how to fit it all on one slide, and then it's much less of a fun exercise than when you get to go in and be like, look at what I did. Let me tell you all about it,
Yes, like a full show and tell where you can show them all the different steps you took.
Yeah.
They can appreciate the complexity and they can appreciate the end result for sure. Do you have any stories to share where besides the one where you showed maybe that neural network to people that maybe didn't understand it when you maybe didn't even understand it yourself, do you have any stories to share where you maybe struggled in the beginning to get your stakeholder to actually understand what you're talking about or sort of take them on that journey?
Yeah, so I think it's like a whole range, right? Because the problems that we are solving are widely different. If we're talking about creating a model where you are going to optimize for ad spend and the marketers have been able to spend their budget however they want for, years, they're not going to be happy with you. They don't want your model, right? So there's like this whole spectrum where sometimes you can try as much as you want, but you're still going to have difficulty getting buy-in. And then hopefully the buy-in just comes from like the senior management, where it's actually that the model is worth a certain amount of money to the business, or is going to improve the customer experience in such a way that, like, it doesn't matter. But the best use cases are really where the model that you're building, like, people are already feeling pretty good about the fact that they want what it is that you have to give them.
And do you typically wait for someone to come up with a request for this kind of stuff, or do you just sometimes come up with ML models that maybe fix a problem that people didn't even know existed yet, and then try to sort of back into them wanting it? What tends to happen more?
Yeah. So, I mean, it really depends on sorry, my dog is coming.
Wait, we want to see. Hold on.
I mean, she is really cute, but she's a bit of a wild card.
That's fine. We're all wild cards here. We've got a teddy bear on the show. Why not a dog? I mean, who cares?
Yeah, right. And I apologize, but I lost you. What was the question?
What types of when you're creating ML models, is it generally because someone said, "Hey, Kristen,
Oh,
we
yeah.
need a model," or is it like you create something to solve a problem that you think exists and then you present it to them, like, "Hey, I could fix your problem"?
Right. So it's all over the place. A lot of times it depends on what the company just cares about at the moment. If you're more strategic, they're going to look at different opportunities across the business and, like, actually size them out and focus on the higher value use cases. But then I've also had examples where we're in meetings and so we had this retention model back in the day, and there was this concern that we were calling people a retention risk when they actually weren't, because the people we were modeling were SMBs, small micro businesses, right? And the idea was, well, what if they just actually have a seasonal usage pattern, and then for like that 3 months of the year where their business is closed down, we're considering them a retention risk, when in fact they're not, right? And so I was able to go off and just use sort of a off-use, off-label use case of the TBATS algorithm and tag it. I ran all the 200,000 customers through it and tagged each person as, do they have a seasonal pattern or not? And so that one wasn't super fast, because you're just then taking that data that's output and writing it into the database, right? So there was not much to cut through there. But it's sort of, it can be anything. It can be that, your manager decides that there's like an interesting use case and wants to give you the opportunity to build something cool. Or it could be that, an interesting question comes up in a meeting and you go out and you use time series. Or it's that they're, strategically looking at what are the, highest and best use cases that we should go after first.
Okay. By the way, note from Susan. I think this is in reference to your wild card. That was.
Oh, yeah, that's me.
I love that. We're getting close to the end of our show. Believe it or not, time really flies when we're having fun here. Quick reminder, you could still win. Just hashtag data. I see more people are participating. You can still win this I Love Data teddy bear. But Kristen, one of my final questions, it's not the last one, but one of my final questions is, for someone who's working in machine learning and they're all excited, they just maybe recently graduated and they have all this like smart ideas that they want to share, and they want to share how much they know about the stuff they've been studying. what would you say are 3 pieces of advice or 3 tips that you would give them when they're actually ready to present those results to stakeholders? We'll like wrap up the show here in your sentence. Three tips.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I don't know what people are learning in terms of presenting in their data science programs, right? Because those didn't
Yeah.
come into existence after I was long out of school. But, absolutely, you need an executive summary. It should be the first thing. You should give away all the goodness. One of the things that I like to say is that, because I feel like sometimes people will put up a chart and the takeaway will be obvious, but they won't take credit for the takeaway. And then somebody else in the meeting says it. And now it was somebody else's idea. Not to, I don't want to come across as petty, but like it's a real thing.
That makes sense though. That makes sense. I tend to make the takeaway the title. Like, what is your point? Make that the title. Then it's just clear. And then the data and the chart and the dashboard will back up your findings. So that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. You absolutely need next steps because, if you are just trying to get buy-in and you've got a demo, you don't have a real thing going. So you want to give people like that sense of just security that you know where you're going next, that you're able to sort of lobby for that direction that you want to go next, because otherwise, again, like it's open. And then, yeah, absolutely, like be using Lime, SHAP to be able to, call out individual rows in your data, how the model responded, show overall how the model is working. Oh, and you know what? I also love experiment tracking tools because it can help you evaluate and compare all of your model training runs together. So that's another way to put a chart on a slide and be able to show your stakeholders that, like, look, this model that we're using here did a much better job at not calling people a retention risk when they weren't, right? And it's like another way to say, like, here's an added level of trust. You're able to see that what we're doing is actually performing well, because for people who aren't in machine learning, right? Like, you can't just call out metrics. You have to bring to light exactly why and how they can trust your model. And also, maybe too, speaking of trust, like, and in a demo setting, you probably don't have this yet because you haven't been working with a model and following it for a long time. But if you've already found caveats where like it doesn't work well, you want to call those out. And it's not that, maybe some of those things are something you can work around, or you can just put in guardrails so that it doesn't eat you. But, you're really making sure that you give people the full picture and all the information that they need to like trust you.
Yeah, I agree. I think those 2 things you mentioned, where you're showing the different models and the outputs and how this model is doing better than the others, and also showing the potential risks or failures if it's not the perfect model, can definitely build that trust. And I didn't really work in machine learning, but I remember when I was in dashboarding and reporting, like we would put stuff in front of the client, and if sometimes the number was off by a decimal, like they would lose all trust. And I think having transparency around the fact that, like, hey, some of this data might not be 100% accurate yet because we're doing some stuff on the back end to fix it, like saying something that ahead of your presentation is usually helpful, because now they're like, okay, if there's a decimal point off, then it's fine, we know why. And it does bring them on that journey and give them more trust. We need more trust in data.
Yep.
All right, you ready for Jim? Go Jim. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and roll our final giveaway here. Okay, congrats again to Intisar and drawing again. All right, let's see who's going to be our lucky winner. Number 2, George Firikin.
Hey, George!
Congratulations,
lucky winner.
Watch out for Susan. She knows where you live. Sorry, Susan. Oh my God. Poor George probably put data once by accident and he won.
I'm a good friend to Kate. Hashtag data.
Sorry, Susan. But Kristen, thank you for being on the show. Final question is, where can people go to learn more, to network, to follow you, to message you, not to stalk you, but like to keep up to date with what you're working on?
Oh, Susan, you were robbed. You were.
I agree. Susan, you deserve the bear. I'm gonna have to send Susan the bear. Like that's the end of it.
Yeah, no, and the best place to follow me is absolutely just on LinkedIn. That is where I spend most of my time and do most of my networking.
Okay, perfect. And I just realized I'm gonna see Susan in Vegas, hopefully, for a conference we're going to together. So I'll bring the bear. It'll be hand delivered, personally
Ooh.
delivered.
Ooh.
But yes, follow Kristen on LinkedIn. She is awesome. She talks a lot about a lot of cool things, and she has a show as well, the Cool Data Projects. Right? Did I get the name
Cool
right?
Data Project Show.
Cool Data Projects show, where she talks about cool data projects. If you've got a cool data project, talk to Kristen. Awesome. Oh yes, and happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Kristen, I'm glad we got to spend it together on our show.
Yes, me too. Wouldn't want to be anyplace else.
Me neither. No. In our home together. There we go. All right. See everybody online.
Bye.
Bye.